coming to get you, Barbara.
Here's some money. Go see a Star Wars.
But I'm trying, Ringo. I'm trying real hard to be the shepherd.
Welcome back to Long Walk Talks. My name is David Hensley. I am the owner and creative director of Long Walk Productions, and I am joined today, as always, by my two co-hosts, Stan Wilson Lee.
How do you do?
And Chris Wilson Barnes.
New year, new joke.
Yes. Nope, new year, same jokes.
Well, Dave, what have you brought us here to argue about?
Well, the theme for this year, after a lot of consideration and after doing 3 years of different themes, I have decided that in the year of our Lord 2023, we are going to discuss controversial opinions. Each one of us is going to pick 4 controversial opinions, and we are going to alternate months.
You know I don't have anything controversial.
You keep saying that, but Stan, I don't think you have any opinions that aren't controversial. I don't think we're going to have any problem coming up with things for you to discuss. You've already got one that you didn't even think was a controversial opinion.
It's not.
Well, to some people it is. Much like my first controversial opinion, because I'm going to kick things off this year, is going to alienate probably half of our listenership and piss them off.
Really?
Oh, for sure, at least half. And depending on how many people out there actually listen to this, probably half of the Star Wars fandom. My controversial opinion for this month, and we're sneaking this episode in right at the end of January, is not only is The Last Jedi a good film, it's a great film, and it's up there with The Empire Strikes Back. And I do not understand the sheer amount of hate that this film gets. And so to defend my opinion on this film, I have crafted what could very easily be a thesis. If I was getting my doctorate degree in Star Wars, which if they offered a doctorate in Star Wars, I would probably get one just to say I'm Dr. Star Wars. But I have a whole list of opinions. So I want to start by addressing 2 of the most common complaints about The Last Jedi. The first of which is the hashtag Not My Luke Skywalker debate. It was incredibly prevalent after this film came out. All of the Star Wars fans who hated this film said that Rian Johnson ruined the character of Luke Skywalker, that that's not how he would have reacted to the situation, that it was completely out of character for Luke. And to that I say, it is your Luke Skywalker. You can get fucked. If you actually watch the movie, Luke's character arc makes perfect sense. Mm-hmm. And if you've watched all the other Star Wars films especially, Luke's arc is perfectly in line with the character.
And if you know the canon, books, everything like that, of what happened with the Jedi during this time.
Yeah. One, that's just called character development. It's been 30 years between Return of the Jedi and The Last Jedi. Luke is going to be a very different character now in his 50s than he was in his 20s. So I just sort of made a list of different points as I was going through and watching the movie, addressing these criticisms. I think a lot of people really wanted and expected Luke to show up at the end of The Last Jedi and just lay waste like a one-man army to the First Order. I cannot think of anything more boring of a finale than an overpowered Luke just showing up and saving the day. That is not at all what any of these films are about. My next note was, I've already said, Luke's journey makes perfect sense if you watch the fucking movie. But in reference to overpowered Luke dominating the First Order, this is just one person's opinion, but Luke's final acts in The Last Jedi are far more badass than him showing up and just cleaning house with a lightsaber. Luke manages to humiliate Kylo Ren and the entire First Order in the space of 5 minutes with an act of enormous power that we have not seen displayed by any other Jedi.
It is foreshadowed earlier in the movie, though, so it's not like totally out of left field. And both who's the main baddie?
Kylo Ren or Snoke?
Snoke.
Yeah.
Snoke, and both Snoke and Kylo talk about, the power of the power, and that
The power of the power.
because if Rey was that it's too much for Rey to do.
Yeah.
So
I've got that down. Yeah, and you're right. It is. Let me skip to that one. So Kylo foreshadows this early on, the first time that he and Rey are able to see each other across space through the Force. He tells her, "You're not doing this. The effort would kill you."
Right.
And as we see, when Luke actually does it, the effort does kill him. But the idea of force projection and powers like this that we've never seen before, that is established 30 minutes into the movie with Kylo and Rey's first projected meeting, which we find out later was set up by Snoke.
yeah.
But let's talk about the whole Luke versus Kylo Ren fight, if you want to call it that, at the end. When Luke actually does, quote unquote, show up. First of all, Luke looks nothing like he did when Rey was there on Octo. He was much older, much more gray-haired, completely different outfit. They did a brilliant job of foreshadowing that he isn't really there. He looks like he did in Kylo's flashback, which was at least 10 years earlier. And he's carrying the lightsaber that just a few scenes earlier got split in half in Kylo and Rey's duel. But he shows up and proceeds to just make Kylo look like a little child, which I think is just so satisfying to watch, because a simple one-on-one duel with Kylo might have had some flashy choreography, might have looked cool, would not have been satisfying. Instead, he completely shrugs off everything that Kylo throws at him, which is an armada of ships and AT-ATs firing on him. And he does the, I want to say classic, but it's not classic to Star Wars, the brush your shoulder off motion. All of this so that he can distract Kylo long enough for the Resistance to escape certain doom, which they do. And then, by just disappearing, because he was projecting himself from across the galaxy, by disappearing and then dying, he completely denied Kylo the opportunity to ever kill him one-on-one.
And before he disappears to go back to die, he ends with a Han Solo reference. "See you around, kid."
I love that line. A lot of people hated it. I remember that being one of the things that David Two Dogs Hayes pointed out to me when he saw it. He hated that line. I love it.
It's a totally homage to Han and respect from Luke, and the fact that that's going to be the thing that really takes Kylo down. It's like, this is what my dad would have said, and I just killed him 2 years ago in the last movie, but I killed him.
They don't really establish how much time has passed, but it has been at most like just a few days since the end of The Force Awakens. And this movie takes place over the course of about a day, I would say.
Really?
Yeah, because
at
one point they mention that the ship that Leia and Poe are on is running out of fuel, and they've got about 18 hours left. So 24 to 36 hours, I'd say the entire movie takes place over the course of. It's a very short time span.
Because Rey gets some training, and there's at least a night.
Yeah, she spends at least I think just one night there. Luke only gives her 3 lessons in the entire movie.
And it's basically, the Jedis are done. They're not coming back. It's over.
The Force is broken.
The Force is broken.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, essentially. And she gleans what she needs to off of that.
Yeah.
What were you about to say, Chris?
It just seems like an odd time frame that they would pace it so soon after the first movie.
Yeah.
There was time difference between New Hope and Empire.
Yeah, New Hope and Empire is 3 years. Empire to Return of the Jedi.
They made it about real time, as in between sequels. Yeah.
Yeah, but then from Empire to Jedi is just 1 year. Even though there was a 3-year gap in releases, it's only been a year since Han was captured in Jedi.
Although realistically, they couldn't make it too long of a stretch between the time frame between the movies, because Rey finds Luke at the end of the first one. So
Yeah, unless you wanted to just jump forward in time and establish that she's been there for a few years in training.
and he's been actively ducking her all that time.
That would have been hilarious. That's another thing people wanted out of Luke, is to immediately step up and say, yes, I will train you. Yes, I'm going to make you the best Jedi in the galaxy. No, he has no interest in doing that.
And too easy. It would be too easy of a, oh yeah, Luke's back, let's train her. It's like, no, he lost his whole training team, and it's like he killed his students, or basically was responsible for the death of all the Jedi.
Yeah, as far as he is concerned, he is the one responsible for their deaths, even though it is Snoke and Kylo, or Ben Solo, that are responsible for those.
Plus, that creates a plot hole in the idea of, like, why would he hide his location?
Right. He even says, why do you think I came to the most remote part of the galaxy?
Unfindable.
Yeah. The most unfindable part of the galaxy, where he has been for, again, at least 10 years. They never really establish how long ago Kylo turned, but if in the flashbacks, it looks as though he's in his late teens. So that would mean, 30 years after Jedi, it's probably been at least 10 years since Ben Solo became Kylo Ren. But again, this ties back to what I said. Just watch the fucking movie. You get meted out the information that you need over the course of the film. I think so many people saw that first scene of Luke and Rey where he throws away the lightsaber, which the last time we saw Luke... Okay, I'm going to start getting real nerdy here.
Excuse me?
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to start getting nerdier. The last time we saw Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi, he threw away his lightsaber. At the end of his fight with Vader, he tosses his lightsaber down a chasm on the Death Star. This movie, Rey hands him his old lightsaber. He immediately throws it away. Now, just like a few years after this came out, there was an episode of The Mandalorian where Luke came back, and it was what people wanted to see of Luke. It was just him murder fucking his way through a bunch of robots.
And de-aged, by the way.
Digitally de-aged, because The Mandalorian is 5 years after Jedi, 25 years before the events. Of course, young Luke is going to be what people wanted out of this character.
Exactly.
But yeah, it starts with him throwing his lightsaber away, refusing to train her, refusing to even talk to her. And I feel like so many people turned off their brains at that point and just went, fuck this movie. That's not my Luke Skywalker. That they didn't pay attention to the fact that Luke had an enormous amount of pressure placed on him. He was expected to train a new generation of Jedi and to do it perfectly the first time. And
he fucked up the first time.
Well, and he fucked up. He made one mistake. If after 15, 20 years of training Jedi, of doing the best he can with what amounted to a very limited amount of training himself, he made one mistake, and that was even considering the possibility of killing Kylo, an act that he admits was weakness on his part, that he didn't go through with. But as far as Kylo concerned, Ben had already been dabbling in the dark side because of his connection to Snoke. He wakes up in the middle of the night, and his master is standing over him with a lit lightsaber. Everything goes to shit. Luke gets knocked out.
And not just the teacher, but the guy who killed Darth Vader standing over you.
And not just that, his uncle.
His uncle, yes.
A blood relative standing over him with a lit lightsaber.
So yeah, you're going to react to that.
Yeah.
Negatively.
He murders Luke's entire school of students, kills all of them, burns it to the ground. So Luke does the exact same thing that Yoda and Obi-Wan, his two main teachers, had done before him, which was fuck off to a remote part of the galaxy. Yoda and Obi-Wan failed against the Emperor and Vader, so Yoda went to Dagobah for 19 years, and Obi-Wan went to Tatooine for 19 years.
The only difference is that Obi-Wan was actually able to watch over Luke and Leia, or Luke, while he was growing up. So the idea that he was still involved, but he was doing it from the farthest distance as possible. So,
And as far as we know, Yoda did nothing but live in a
Yoda
hut.
did nothing but live in a hut.
In a swamp for 19 years. Well, actually, with the time frame, 22 years by the time Luke actually finds him.
Do you think Luke made the connection around 18 years in? That is like, oh shit, I need to be on the lookout starting next year.
I mean, yeah. That seems to be a poor number for the Jedi because going all the way back to the prequel trilogy, Anakin Skywalker was 9 years old in the events of The Phantom Menace. He's 19 years old in Attack of the Clones, which is when he slaughters all the Tusken Raiders and starts turning to the dark side. Yeah, it's very Stephen Kingian. If you're a Stephen King fan, the number 19 seems to be kryptonite for these characters.
I think it just might have been doomed to failure, considering that pretty much the entirety of Jedi teachings amounts to being an inflexible asshole.
Yeah, basically.
And he tells Rey that the legacy of the Jedi is failure.
Yeah, because they were so fucking inflexible, and I think that's the lesson Luke finally learned
from Yoda. When Yoda returns, when he's about to burn down the tree with the
favorite scene in the movie. I want to talk about the Luke and Yoda scene just on its own, but you're right. Yeah, Yoda does point out to him exactly what he did
These
wrong.
books mean nothing.
But again, going back to the Mandalorian, like Luke takes Grogu, aka Baby Yoda, to his academy to train him, and then immediately you see in the side stories of Book of Boba Fett, Luke immediately reverted back to what the Jedi were doing generations before, what eventually led to their downfall, which was denying Jedi emotional connections by not allowing Grogu to see the Mandalorian. And by not allowing Mandalorian to give him a gift, which is what he came to Luke's planet to do. And by making Grogu try to choose to stick with the Order solely. Well, that's what fucked up Anakin Skywalker in the first place. What led to the rise of Darth Vader was trying to keep him from making emotional connections.
They repressed him so hard, he just went and murdered a bunch of sand people.
And then eventually a bunch of children.
Oh no, he was all in at that point.
Oh yeah. At that point, he was completely turned. But
well, that'll lead into that might be the lead into mine when I come in March. But the idea that that's kind of the difference between Vulcans and Romulans, who are basically the same, but the Vulcans went hardcore asshole and said, let's push down our emotions and build on logic and precision, and the Romulans were like, fuck this, we're gonna love our emotions, and they became a warring race, of course, but the idea that they're listening to their emotions and living life that they feel is their best life, where the Vulcans are like, if it's not logical, let's be careful of it. If it's emotional based, let's be careful of it. So
it's almost as if...
Well, that's your official warning, everyone.
It's almost as if the lesson to be learned here is that controlling your emotions is way more important and valuable than just suppressing them.
Right.
Which, whether it's Star Trek or Star Wars, leads to a whole lot of death if you try that. So I want to continue on with this whole not my Luke Skywalker bullshit. Again, everyone thought that this showdown between him and Kylo was going to be an epic lightsaber battle. That would have gone disaster.
You mean like Darth Vader and Kenobi and New Hope?
Yes, yeah, back before.
It was largely unnoticeable until he started waving around like a Muppet.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. David Two Dogs Hayes has entered the studio and distracted all of us. Anyway.
Yeah, he's a large presence.
I was very amused.
Yes. Anyway. lightsaber battles between Jedi and Sith, or dark side users in general, tend to go very poorly for the Jedi in almost every single fucking scenario throughout Star Wars. Qui-Gon,
Jedi are only guaranteed success when they're aiming for a non-Force user who has extra limbs.
yeah, exactly. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan versus Darth Maul. Qui-Gon Jinn fucking dies.
And then it's Darth Maul's turn.
Yeah, and then Obi-Wan does defeat him.
It
but,
alternates.
Yeah. Obi-Wan and Anakin versus Count Dooku. Obi-Wan gets knocked out. Anakin loses a fucking arm. Even Yoda can only fight Dooku to a standstill. And eventually, Anakin only defeats Dooku by tapping into the dark side.
Right.
It's almost as though, even if they're doing it in the most unhealthy way possible, controlling their emotions makes them a better fighter.
Well, the using their emotions, specifically, things like hate and anger, is what makes the Sith so powerful.
It's kind of like how a lot of like martial arts in the real world are all about channeling those emotions properly.
Yes.
But isn't it also, for me, the idea of the Force on the light side of the Force is that you're not really destined to win the fight at that moment. Is that your death will inspire other greats to replace you and go on to make greater things happen.
Oh,
so
neat. I'd rather be alive than a lesson.
Right, yeah.
But that's the point, is like the dark side, you're going to win in the moment.
You're going to feel great.
But your ultimate experience is going to be that of utter failure. And that may take eons. That may take thousands and millennia, but the idea that every time a Jedi dies, that's that much added to the goodness of the Force.
Well, yeah, because in some cases they literally become one with the Force.
Exactly.
And as shown by Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, Yoda, and eventually Luke.
Yes.
But as Chris says, maybe it's better to be alive.
Well, that's Leia's part. That's Leia, because she's always calling people back. It's like, this is, don't be a hero. Just do what you need to do and get your people back.
Leia is the smartest and most practical character in the original and the sequel trilogies.
But she also knows that she's laying groundwork for the sacrifices of the Jedi.
Right.
So,
well, it's the difference between fighting a war and a holy war.
Yes.
Yeah. But my whole point about Jedi versus Sith was, in almost every scenario,
of course,
the Jedi lose. Mm-hmm. Had Luke, who had not been actively practicing the Force for at least 10 years or keeping up with his lightsaber, facing off against somebody like Kylo Ren at the height of his fucking power,
he'd have died.
Luke would have been killed.
Yeah.
Which would have struck an enormous blow to the Resistance had they all been there to witness this.
I just wanted to, if that was what would have happened, I wanted him to look over at Rey and Finn every fucking time.
Right. It would not have. He even tells Rey earlier in The Last Jedi, this is not going to go how you think it will. And him going one-on-one facing Kylo Ren, that would not have ended the way anybody would think it would or wanted it to. So
but I agree with you in the sense that the way it went down, him using the Force projection, is even more badass. Is because he totally knows he would have lost.
Yeah.
Physically, in that place, but he also knows that if he would have been there to actually fight and kill Kylo, he has submitted to the dark side.
Yeah.
And the idea that Kylo gets so revved up, and the proof of how far he's fallen is so blatant, even to his side. It's like, because all the Force projection does is move around. I don't think I don't think he does any kind of offensive.
He makes no physical contact with Kylo whatsoever. It's, again, you're talking about foreshadowing. Everyone likes to complain, where did Force projection come from? They are on the planet Crate at that point, which is covered in a fine layer of salt on the ground. Every time somebody walks across it, they're moving that salt, and you can see the red clay underneath it, which itself is a whole metaphor for blood on the ground. But anyway, it's made very prominent when Kylo is getting into position to fight Luke, his feet scraping on the ground and clearing away that salt. Luke's feet are not touching the salt. You don't see those same kind of footprints left behind by him.
And Kylo doesn't notice.
He's too focused on fighting Luke to notice, the resistance is getting away. And I mean...
And that's badass to me. That's totally military and just brilliance.
It's also the most in line with what traditional Jedi values were supposed to be, that Eastern philosophy of peace and justice. That's what the Jedi were supposed to be before they got militarized and became soldiers.
And if you can physically win without physically being there, that's even better.
Yes, exactly. Luke accomplishes everything he set out to do by causing zero harm. Didn't injure Kylo in any way. Still humiliates him, still gives the resistance time to get away.
And then his dying adds hope.
Yeah.
Adds more hope for the resistance.
No one actually sees Luke die. All they see is he just disappears.
But Rey and Leia know.
Yeah, they feel it. And finally, my last point about why what people thought they wanted would have been a bad idea. It's telegraphed to you in the first 10 minutes of the movie. The opening of The Last Jedi is this big space battle where Poe tries to go one-on-one and be the lone wolf hero, clear a path for the resistance to come and their bombers to come in and destroy a dreadnought. It ends disastrously. Yes, they accomplish their goals. They destroy the dreadnought. They lose their entire fleet of bombers and the majority of their starfighters, and then like an hour later proceed to lose the rest of their their ships. And Poe's whole arc throughout the movie is learning not to be a fucking hero, not to try to be a lone wolf, and why that doesn't work. Why coming up with a fucking plan and executing that plan is better than running in guns blazing.
And there's only like 2 or 3 people that can come back from being blown out into space and bring themselves back onto the ship and end up surviving. So the whole idea that he's having this major row with Laura Dern, of all people,
who I love in this movie.
Who I love in this movie too, except and it's like I forgot how much I didn't like the character, and then I'm like not liking the character first, and then all of a sudden what she does and how she was there because of Leia, not because Leia got Princess was hurt or almost dead. Leia basically put her in that position, and it's like you're gonna have to deal with Poe. And her dealings with Poe turn out to be, again,
a harsh lesson for him to learn.
But the idea of what she does, the whole idea of why they're sacrificing themselves, and just the idea of hope, nothing else grander, but hope. That's all it is.
Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Well, I think you're glossing over the fact that the entire point of her character is also to demonstrate when you make the hero move. You don't make the hero move every time, because Poe was so excited over getting to the word victory, he didn't see the word Pyrrhic in front of it.
Absolutely.
Right. No, and you're absolutely right. And it's in my notes to discuss it later, but since we're already talking about Laura Dern and that sacrifice, her final act of resistance, her final fuck you to the First Order is so goddamn epic.
Yep.
And just the perfect button on that character, because you're right, the hero move isn't always the right one to play
at that time,
but goddamn when she does it,
yes,
it works.
And the whole idea that that's foreshadowed by her not being who Poe thought that character was, or that general was. He was expecting something totally different, and it's Lord fucking Dern, and in this flowing dress and this popped up hair and everything, and it's like, that's not your normal general hero person that won this entire battle against the Empire or whatever. But
she's more akin to young Leia.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, so that's my opinions on hashtag not my Luke Skywalker, hashtag yes it is fuckers. If you watch the movie, if you've ever paid attention, if you know anything about Star Wars, that is your Luke Skywalker. That is the best arc that they could have given him, because again, badass Luke Skywalker, wiping the floor with the First Order, training Rey to be the best Jedi in the galaxy, boring, not satisfying. So I'm going to move on, and I'm going to talk about the second thing that people like to complain about the most when it comes to The Last Jedi, and that's Rey being a Mary Sue. If you don't know what a Mary Sue is, it's a fan fiction writing term for a character who's just fucking perfect in every way. A Mary Sue character is always the most gorgeous person in the room. They're always the smartest person in the room. They're not afraid. They're great at everything. That is not what Rey is. Again,
That's John Boyega's character. That's Finn.
No, it's not.
No, I mean he.
I guess it would be Poe, right?
No,
Poe thinks that he is a Mary Sue.
Yes, Poe thinks he's a Mary Sue.
But no, that is not Rey's character whatsoever. Anybody who thinks that doesn't actually understand what a Mary Sue is. Rey, as demonstrated in The Force Awakens and in The Last Jedi, Rey is more often than not scared shitless of whatever is going on.
And she says that.
She tells
all the way
Luke
through
early
both
on
movies
that she is scared about what's happening to her, the situations that she has found herself in. She's scared of never seeing her parents again because she is still convinced that one day they are going to come back and pick her up and everything's going to be fine with them again. Even though we find out later things were never fine with her and her parents, but we're not going to talk about Rise of Skywalker. Rey is also naive to the point of suicidal overconfidence, as I wrote it, which is another quality shared by both Luke Skywalker and Anakin Skywalker. Yeah. Naivety tends to run in the Jedi. Because it's a fanatical religion where you're taught to believe that the Force is always looking out for you.
Made up of kids, mind you, because most of the
Force is made up of kids.
No, Jedi's end up being are these kids that have yet to learn everything there is about life, and so the Jedi's take them to hopefully teach them about the light side, and say, okay, there's a reason to be good, where the dark side is just actually living life. It's not dark because it's bad or whatever. Basically, the dark side, you're turning to the dark side because life is good on the dark side, and you get to enjoy yourself. You get to have parties,
not
you get
necessarily. It's because you've suffered and you are kind of beaten down, and you're more easily like, well, if I can wield this power, I should use it to make things right for me.
Make right things right for me.
Might makes right.
Which is just basically living life, for yourself.
The movies do not really do a good job of explaining how powerful the dark side is. It's just sort of presented as like, okay, it's the opposite of the light side. There are good Jedi and there are bad Jedi. In the expanded universe, the dark side of the Force is portrayed as like this incredibly corruptive force that once it has corrupted you enough and you fully embrace it, you are essentially a different person. That's what happened to Anakin becoming Vader. That's what happened to Ben Solo becoming Kylo Ren. Sorry, this is just a tangent about the dark side since we're talking about critical differences, but
the thing is, it's not necessarily that tangential, because when Finn and go to that planet to find Finn and Rose go to the planet to find the master Codebreaker. Turns out to be Benicio del Toro. They're normal people that just happen to do stuff that was working on both sides, so they got money. So yes, in the sense of the corruption, yes, but again, it's people looking to have a good life. And so it's like, how if you're not part of the groups that are doing the resistance or part of the empire necessarily, upper levels of that, you're just the regular person that just happened to make a lot of money. Then you have the kids that were running those animals that Rose sets free and stuff.
Yeah.
That are who we're hoping become part of the good side of the Force.
Well, the rest of the galaxy, like if you're not a part of the Resistance or you're not part of the Empire, you're just trying to survive in the Star Wars galaxy.
Exactly.
But one of the Mary Sue qualities that people like to bring up about Rey is she's just good at everything. She the first time she handles a lightsaber at the end of The Force Awakens, she's able to beat Kylo Ren in combat. She's able to call the lightsaber to her. She's able to use Force abilities. And people bring this up as though like a preternatural innate understanding of the Force is a new thing to this series. That is the entire reason Qui-Gon Jinn wanted to train Anakin in the first place, is because at 9 years old, Anakin was displaying these huge amounts of Force energy, I guess is the best way to put it.
And the whole Obi-Wan protecting Luke. And then in the series, baby Leia.
Yeah.
Like,
Luke,
you got to watch out for where they go to.
Luke was able to pick up on training that normally takes Jedi decades to accomplish.
And they talk about it in Last Jedi where both several people talk about how Kylo displayed this
the same kind of raw power.
energy. And
Luke tells her, I've only ever seen this kind of raw power once before. It didn't scare me then, but it does now.
And then he sees the same type in her, which means that's the power the Jedi are being careful about dealing with.
Right. Early on in the movie, Snoke even calls out Kylo Ren on being defeated by a girl who'd never held a lightsaber before.
Yep.
The movie makes it a point to mention that. And let's talk about Luke again. Luke, at the end of A New Hope, made a nearly impossible shot, firing the shot that destroyed the Death Star in a ship that he had never flown before. Then you go on to Empire Strikes Back. His entire fight against Vader, he pretty much fights him to a standstill. The first time he's ever used a lightsaber in combat. A lot of people forget that when Luke fights Vader at the end of Empire, Luke had not fought anyone with a lightsaber prior to that point. He used it a few times. He used it in training on Dagobah. He cut off a Wampa's arm with it. Yeah,
but that was after that Wampa really kicked his ass.
Yeah.
Also, he did use that training bot, which gave him a lot of trouble.
Yeah. So Luke was able to hold his own against the most powerful Sith Lord in the galaxy the first time he used his lightsaber in combat. Is it entirely impractical that Rey could do the same fucking thing when it's shown that she already has some kind of combat training or experience when she's spinning that bow staff around? She grew up on a planet full of criminals.
Right.
On her own. She had some sort of combat training.
There was a criminal element, but it was basically a planet of scroungers and
scavengers. Yeah.
Is part of the controversy about that, where Luke and Leia, they actually have their offspring of Force users, and so where we don't know about Rey's parents.
At this point, we didn't know about Rey's parentage. It wasn't until Rise of Skywalker. Did you see Rise of Skywalker?
Yes.
Okay.
And I love it, actually.
Man, I have a lot of hard opinions on Rise of Skywalker. I watched that movie and I left it going.
Well, I mean, we didn't know shit about Luke's parentage until the end of Empire.
Yeah, exactly. I walked out of Rise of Skywalker going, it was all right. It was a good end to the trilogy. But as the last 3 years have gone by, 4 years at this point, I have soured on the Rise of Skywalker, especially knowing like what Colin Trevorrow's original pitch for it was. It could have been a lot more.
Well, I haven't seen it, but from everything I've heard, it sounded like a hard overcorrection to response.
It was, and it was a safe overcorrection.
Yeah.
Which I suppose is in line with J.J. Abrams, because Force Awakens came out in 2015 and everyone said, oh, it's too much like the other movies. They didn't do anything different. It's essentially a New Hope.
And then they did something different.
So Rian Johnson swung for the fences and made something completely different People say completely different. It still hits almost
Yeah.
beat for beat. This movie is almost beat for beat The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
But it was too different, and people said, "Oh, that's not Star Wars. It's too different." Well, make up your fucking minds. You were upset when it was too similar. You're mad that it's not similar enough. So J.J. Abrams over-course corrected and gave us The Rise of Skywalker, which tried to tie everything up in a neat little bow and was just too easy.
This is the perfect place for me to say this, because I've been saving this up for the right moment. But it was just with Star Wars. Honestly, it's just become a terrible mix of a large number of things, and it just exploded all over The Last Jedi, which is a lot of the Star Wars fan base is unpleasable.
Oh, a lot of every fan base, but
yeah, but Star Wars in particular is especially well known for having an unpleasable fan base from before the sale.
Yeah.
They are used, and it doesn't help that they are used to, because Lucas was vague and was never really interested in going in and filling in a lot of hard details. The fan base is, and in many ways, largely responsible for every minute possible detail of the world of the Star Wars universe being filled in.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem with the Last Jedi and its plots, because specifically because it's a Star Wars movie, because things weren't detailed enough for some people. They were fucking losing it. And then, since that you take an unpleasable fan base, and you have one of if not the biggest franchises of all time, with a rabid, unpleasable fan base that is now owned by a company that lives and dies by fan reaction, by I can't even think of the right word, by
Franchisability?
not franchisability. I mean in terms of like how they take in, like they listen to opinions from fans. They take them, like they live and die by, they listen for them constantly. And it's also a company known for, with the big properties, breathing hard down the neck of the people making it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you add, of course, an unbearable amount of hype.
Yeah.
That's everything that went into The Last Jedi in a meta sense, not a creative sense. It's just in the meta of the environment it was being made in. And of course, that's what you got. You got an incredible shit show of everyone seemingly hating it for a myriad of reasons, not to mention the racists and the sexists.
Well, yeah, people who were mad that their heroes weren't all but white guys anymore.
That, and the fact is, like they showcase new characters, and people are like, "Get out of the way! Where's the?"
Yeah, we don't want Finn. We don't want a girl.
Oh, China
protagonist.
definitely didn't want Finn.
Right. Nobody wanted Rose.
Oh, the hate she got was unbearable.
Oh my God.
The hate that John Boyega got was enough that he's like, I will probably never do. They Harrison Forded him. He basically.
Right.
Well, I don't know if there's a dollar amount big enough that will ever make Boyega want to be like, yes, maybe I will come back.
Rose was set up to be as integral to the plot as Rey and Finn and Poe.
Yeah.
But the fan, quote unquote, because I don't really want to call them actual fans, but the quote unquote fan outcry to the character of Rose was so piss poor.
It wasn't a lot of people. It was just a sustained campaign of racism.
Yeah, that they cut her role. And misogyny, yeah. They cut her role in Rise of Skywalker to almost nothing.
Yeah.
I feel horrible for that actor because she did a good job.
She was great.
Yeah, she did great.
Fucking fair weather fans, fake fans. Anyway, I have two more points to make on the Rey Mary Sue argument. One of them is the movie makes it a point to show Rey's biggest foe is herself. Mm-hmm. She literally goes through the exact same scenario that Luke did in Empire, where he faces Vader, cuts off his helmet, and sees that the face underneath is his. Rey finds herself in that cave where she touches a reflection that she thinks is going to show her parents, and instead it shows her herself. And then when Luke is first trying to teach her to tap into the Force, things go awry very quickly, and he has to pull her out of it. And he tells her that when she was faced with the dark side, she ran directly fucking towards it.
She dived into the dark side.
Her first instinct was to run towards the dark. Those are not Mary Sue qualities. A Mary Sue would have sat down on that rock, meditated with Luke for the first time, and mastered every Force ability there was. And
Luke wouldn't have shut up about how good she was doing.
Right. He would have just allowed it on her. Oh my God, you're the best student. You're going to save the galaxy and the Resistance. And
I've never seen anyone be this good this fast. Phrases like that would pop up.
Right. So no, you fucking misogynists. Rey is not a Mary Sue. Anyway, those are my two theses, whatever.
Theses.
Thank you.
Your thesis pieces?
Yes. So now I want to talk about a couple of random things, one of which we already talked about, Laura Dern and the fuck you to the First Order by slamming her fucking ship through Snoke's ship at light speed and cutting it in half. Chef's kiss. Yes, please. Love it. But I wanted to point out, I one day hope to face death with the same sort of dignity that one First Order admiral did when he sneered at an oncoming explosion. They do that nice push in after the bombers finally blow up that enormous ship at the beginning, the Dreadnought. There is a push in on the First Order general or whoever, admiral, whatever, as he looks at an oncoming explosion and he sneers at it. And I was like, yes, sneer at your death. I'm here for it. I love it. One of the few complaints about the film that I have, it's not a perfect film. It's a solid 9 from me. Everything on Canto Bight, the casino planet, goes on a little bit too long. But Finn and Rose learn an important lesson about war profiteering, which is not a subplot that I saw ever showing up in a Star Wars film, but here we are. They learn how war profiteering works. Actually, I wrote those around this first note that I took down. Why was Joseph Gordon-Levitt using that accent? Joseph Gordon-Levitt is the guy that goes and alerts the authorities that Finn and Rose just parked their ship on a beach. And he's using this weird, like, foghorn leghorn type accent.
Well, I guess you're not supposed to be Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Wait, I forget. How many lines does he have?
It's not many, and I'm pretty sure it's all CGI. You can't even tell that it's Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Well, that's what it is. He just wanted to do something fun, and it's like, all right.
Because he's is it a robot?
He's
no,
not.
He's like a waiter or something, right?
No, he's one of the high rollers.
High rollers, okay. Because Justin Theroux is also in it as he's the actual guy they're looking for.
Yeah.
And they end up with Benicio del Toro and the war profiteering. But that I don't know why about JGL. The fact that it's a Ryan Johnson movie. So
I think we're putting too much thought into just a fun little side character.
Like, just why that dialogue?
Because no one stopped him. That's literally the answer.
And but
I'm betting Ryan Johnson's like, that's good. That's pretty funny. I'll let that go.
But there is one thing about, and I think this might be where...
Actually, sorry to interrupt. I would let stuff like that go for the sole reason of I know for a fact Star Wars nerds the world over would have to find a way to rationalize that into the universe.
Yes, there is a...
I would add more... I would do more stuff like that. I was like, all right, you work that one in too.
There is an author out there right now, or maybe like after this movie came out, who is in the unenviable position of having to now come up with a backstory for that one character and why he's on this casino planet and why the planet he comes from, everyone talks like Foghorn Leghorn.
I'm guessing brain damage.
Well, yeah. I was thinking that he was like a worker there because he's like, I told him they can't park there, and then he turn, when he so it's that moment, and then the moment where he identifies them in the actual casino. It's like those are the guys that
He's
parked
just
in
an
the
overly
place.
concerned patron.
Okay,
He's
all right.
wearing a space tuxedo.
Okay, all right. But I mean, if you're a hostess or
Trust
a
me,
host,
someone who works there wouldn't care.
Right, no.
but
It's like, that's not my job. I don't give a shit.
my thing with that though is, I think, and this might be where it started for especially the Disney versions, is that because one of my things when I talk about it is that in Star Wars there's a very good delineation between good and bad, and this war profiteering issue is like one of the first moments that I remember of something being really, really oddly gray.
Right.
And then that's continued on through the series, and because there's a lot of especially like in
Andor.
Well, I haven't watched Andor yet, but probably more so in that. But in like Obi-Wan with the whole the three just the cars I want to call them, but the three justices that are going, and then the one turns out to be
the Inquisitors.
The Inquisitors. And,
I think that's a bit of a stretch because they are explicitly evil.
But then she turns out not to be. But the idea that there's a lot of gray happening now in Star Wars stuff where I don't remember it being so blatant. I remember it being blamed.
I think that's
black and white.
I think that's twofold, honestly. Threefold maybe, because one, George Lucas is gone.
Right. There's a lot more minds at work here now.
Yeah. Two, I think that's a symptom of more modern writing.
Mm-hmm.
Is you want to nuance everything.
Right. Everything isn't good and just good and evil anymore.
But and you know what? That's oddly prescient because that's going to come up next month. And then the third thing is, I think I said the third thing, didn't I? Yeah, I did. Okay, never mind.
The idea, though, that
well, no. It was also the fact, like, I think people who have grown up with Star Wars and now have gotten to work with Star Wars, they wanna do their thing to build on the legacy of Star Wars, and it's just like, I think it's like.
Well, yeah, we were kids when Star Wars came out,
and now you're grown up and things are complicated, so you want Star Wars to be complicated.
I was an almost teenager, but the idea that it's no longer just a space opera. It's not a Buck Rogers thing, serial. It's actually, it's setting itself in reality. It's setting itself in.
The Last Jedi opens up with what is essentially a World War II bombing run.
Right.
It's a lot. It's a lot, like Chris was saying. It's much more modern. It's much more, pathos and nuanced, and Eros is even explored. There isn't the idea that it's not black and white anymore. Oh gosh, that's hard. But it's not good and evil, not just good and evil. That there is going to be shades of gray all the way through.
Well, there's plenty of black and white. Like the stormtroopers and the Imperial officers still wear gray.
But now you get what's her face, Gwendolyn Christie
in silver.
In silver. So it's like and being one of the worst of the worst, but her costume is sleek as fuck.
Poor Gwendolyn Christie. The character of Captain Phasma was hyped to the moon.
Phasma was clearly supposed to be so much more than it ended up being.
She was supposed to be like a Boba Fett analog, like, oh man, cool armor, mysterious background, like this person's gonna be badass. Nope.
Well,
Katie was.
To be fair, she ended up being like Boba Fett because if you remember, Boba Fett, originally died, quote unquote, after being shot by a blind Han Solo over a Sarlacc pit.
Yep, and then getting his backpack getting his jetpack slapped by a
Luke, wasn't it? With his lightsaber.
I can't.
He goes haywire. He goes down the Sarlacc pit.
It's. Han is holding a staff and hears that Boba Fett is nearby. And
Boba Fett, where?
Turns around, hits his jetpack, it malfunctions. He flies directly into the Sarlacc pit. World's best bounty hunter taken off the board, just like that.
And as we recall, in The Force Awakens, Captain Phasma, cool badass Captain Phasma, gets thrown down the trash chute to start with.
Yes. We'll wrap things up on some lighter notes than the nuance between good and evil. How great are porgs?
Porgs are great.
One of the cutest things in recent memory to come out of Star Wars. God damn adorable.
When the one becomes his hood
Porgs
ornament.
are 100% some Disney executive going, we need a marketable plushie.
Yeah.
Design a Star Wars creature that will be
BB-8
that.
does not suffice.
Well, no, BB-8's good in that, you know, he's great for action figures and little robot things, but we
you
need
a plush toy.
We need a plush toy.
And Ryan Johnson looked at that and said, okay, I'll give you your plush toy. And then
But he's gonna be a mini Chewie.
Well, and then he wrote in the scene where Chewie is roasting one over a spit and preparing to eat it.
Yes.
While all the other porgs look at him sadly with their big eyes, like, please don't eat our friend.
Look, if they're of one, that's actually based on nature. I have a story about that, and two, if they're as bird-like as I think they are, they probably eat some of it a little bit.
Probably. I also sorry, go ahead, Sam.
Well, but it works because he ends up not eating what he has on his spit at the time, and then he ends up taking the one that stays, and that becomes his mini-me for the rest of the
that one was cool with murder, so I was like, yeah.
By the end of the film, there are porgs all over the Millennium Falcon. They have little nests, and
so what I hear is he's basically trafficking an invasive species across the galaxy. It's gonna be tribbles.
I love porgs, but I also love the space nuns on Octo that are getting increasingly more annoyed by Luke and Rey's antics.
Space nuns, and then the cats on the last planet.
I mean, literally, there goes the neighborhood with those humans moving in them. Right?
But yes, exactly. And Luke talks about it. They take care of the stuff, and you're fucking it up, man. but those cats that lead them through the other exit
Finn
of
and Rose. The foxes.
Yeah, the foxes.
Yes,
those are awesome.
Yes, great creature design. Love those. Very clever use of that, because that leads up to Finn saying, well, how are they getting out? And then following them to the exit.
That could have been followed up by seeing a large pile of the fox bones. Like, oh, they don't.
Right.
But the idea that one hangs out and says, come on, this is the way out.
Yeah.
You know, just the fact that the animals aren't like the Ewoks in the early films, or any of the animals basically that ended up.
Ewoks are sapient. They're not animals.
But you know what I'm talking about. That's like they're not human characters, but they're the ones that allow the humans to move.
We're going to take a detour for a second here, just because the other night I was scrolling through Reddit, and somebody posed the question, what's the most fucked up aspect of the Star Wars universe that no one ever talks about? And somebody pointed out, in Return of the Jedi, when they get to Endor, the Ewoks give Leia a dress that fits her perfectly. And then a few scenes later, tie Han and Luke and Chewbacca up, and we're going to roast them over a spit, implying they were going to eat them. Which means the reason they had that dress to give to Leia is because the last woman who came to their planet that was Leia's size, they probably ate her.
Probably. I mean, they probably went for Luke and Han first because, they're bigger. They probably had more meat on them.
And then somebody compounded on that by saying, that the Ewoks probably ate all of those stormtroopers they killed afterwards.
Oh, 100%.
Can you imagine the rebels at the end? They're celebrating, they're hugging, they're high-fiving, they're dancing. Ewoks. And then as they watch the Ewoks start stripping the armor off the stormtroopers and getting them ready, like gutting them, getting them ready to roast.
These are chicken.
Guys, we got to go while they still like us.
Yeah. Anyway, that was just a
No, that's important. And I mean, considering, again, the story was that was originally supposed to be Wookiees.
Yeah.
So all they did was shrink them.
Yeah. But I want to take us out on my last note, and it's, Stan, you already brought it up. The scene between Luke and Yoda's Force Ghost is my favorite scene in Star Wars canon, or any of the movies, anything else, because it is classic Empire Strikes Back Yoda imparting some hard lessons on Luke once again. Katie will tell you, I started crying the first time we saw this in the theater because I was so touched by this scene. Like, this was my childhood brought back. But Yoda gets the best line in Star Wars when he says to Luke, We are what they grow beyond.
Yep.
That is the burden of all masters.
Yep.
Fucking, what a fucking great line by one of the greatest fictional characters.
That is my premise to when I was saying earlier about it's not the Jedi's destiny to necessarily win. It's
to endure.
It's to endure and to allow the ones after to grow beyond. And that's what Yoda says.
And he also tells Luke the greatest teacher failure is.
Failure is, yes.
Oh, God, so fucking good.
And he does it with such, it's like he's dead and he's been dead for hundreds of years now or whatever, relatively.
Well, 30.
30 years. But the idea that he's like, in death, he's become, I'm the trickster of tricksters now because he just told, he's still given the wisdom of Yoda, but the thing, the fact that he totally derides the books.
Page turners, they are not.
He destroys them and their meaning, and it's like he sets the tree on fire himself.
Well, Yoda probably also knew, because the end of Last Jedi, we are shown that Rey took all of the sacred Jedi texts from that hollow and had them on the Falcon. So Yoda, being his little trickster self, was giving Luke the business by making him think he had blown up all of those books. As you say, at this point, Yoda has been dead for 30 years, has been one with the Force, reappears, and one of his first acts is to summon a bolt of lightning from beyond the grave that sets fire to this tree.
I want to think as soon as Luke became one with the Force, there was a lot of hugs, and then he just starts choking Yoda like Bart Simpson.
While Yoda is just beating his ghost on the head with his cane. Yes. So that is my argument as to why The Last Jedi is a great Star Wars film. It's a great film outside of the franchise, and to me it's on the same level as Empire.
I can't even play devil's advocate because, again, to be in that world, it's like, okay, here's my something I'm going to bring up. I enjoy The Hobbit. Peter Jackson's The Hobbit series, just because I'm in the world.
There it is. I was trying to think of another one for you.
So it's like,
I'm not watching those movies.
But the idea that, and my whole argument is, okay, first of all, this is a space opera, so it's like your arguments really aren't going to hold that much weight because for all intents and purposes, and ostensibly these films do not hold that much weight anyway, if you think about it. But the idea that you're back in the world, and so it's like, I can't even play devil's advocate if you were looking for an argument to happen. It's like, this is great for me because here I am. The characters are still true to what they are. I've been with it since 1977. It's like I'm not as nerd on them as you are. And
Star Wars is my religion.
And it's not even close to a religion for me. But the idea, again, being in that world, and it's like I'm not a big proponent of the 1, 2, 3 group.
That's a discussion all on its own.
But the idea, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, I can totally jump on board with because the world is set, and then again the new series stuff. It's just Ewan McGregor is Obi-Wan, perfect. And it's like the world is happening and it's still there and it's great. And just to have that movie, that type of film that is still supplying that much hope.
Yeah.
And
that has endured this long?
Has endured this long, and the hope is still true hope. That in itself is a reason for its existence. There should not be that much jibing of it because it's a movie to allow audiences to feel good again.
Yeah, I do want to say, Chris and I found out within the last couple of years that there's the generation under us loves the prequels, which just blew my fucking mind. Like, I had no idea. I thought, aside from like the most hardcore of we love it because it's Star Wars fans, the general consensus was the prequels are just fucking bad, right? And then we find out that there's all these teens and 20-somethings who love the prequels. So I was like, okay, I haven't watched any of these in a long time, pretty much since they came out, which I was 13 years old when The Phantom Menace came out. I was 16 for Attack of the Clones. I was 19 for Revenge of the Sith. So I was like, you know what? It's been a good long time since these movies have come out. I need to watch these with fresh eyes, past all the hype that was surrounding when they came out, past all the controversy, just see what I feel about them now in my 30s. This was sometime last year. As a 35-year-old man, how do I feel about these films now? I watched The Phantom Menace, and at the end of it, I was like, okay, not a great film, but a lot of big ideas, and with some tweaks, some rewrites, somebody to reel George Lucas in a little bit, could have been a great film. And then I started watching Attack of the Clones, and I made it 10 minutes in, and I was like, I can't fucking do it. Oh my God, this is bad. Oh my God, this movie is just so fucking bad. That ruined that experiment. I didn't finish Attack of the Clones, and I didn't go back to rewatch Revenge of the Sith.
Amanda and I were talking the other day at a dinner, and she's gone through from January 1st, and she went through a list of movies, and she's watching movies every day, and she said something. She's saying how she rewatched all the Star Wars stuff, and I said, even Phantom Menace. And it's a movie.
I mean, she's technically correct.
But the idea that, and then I'd like to, oh yeah, that's why I like The Hobbit, because you're in the world again. You're in the experience. You're participating in a festivity that is just like has grabbed you once, and you're back in that world. So it's like, yeah, we may have hated it when it came out. It didn't live up to the hype, whatever. But if we watch it now and just see it, it's a movie, and it's part of this world that we love. So,
but Attack of the Clones is just objectively bad. Chris, what are your thoughts?
Are we wrapping up?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to end this with I wanted to piggyback with a minor controversial opinion of my own, and that is, it was all right. Last Jedi.
Oh, okay.
I think a major problem with movies like this now, or has been for a while, is that it's pass fail. It has to you either fall into the you're only allowed to either fall into the camp of, I think this was a cinematic masterpiece, or I think it is the utter dog shit dragging down these movies today. And I don't think people enough nowadays go, I liked it. I liked watching the movie, and I have no further investment beyond that.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
And I'm glad for you. I'm glad for you. It's a fantastic movie that it is rated so highly for you. And it's just like, I remember going with you to watch it, and at the end I was just like, okay, I enjoyed watching that movie, and beyond that, I haven't felt any strong feeling one way or the other.
It wasn't a bad 2.5 hours.
No.
No, it's bad.
I mean, you guys know I love the Marvel universe. I love DC. We've talked extensively about Mass Effect and how it's my favorite video game series, comic books. But Star Wars will always be my great love in fiction. It is. I was being hyperbolic when I said it earlier, but it could be my religion. I just love Star Wars so much. But
We'll get more into that.
I just think it's okay for movies to be all right.
Yeah, no, you're completely right.
Totally right.
No, and I'm not trying to sweep away what you were saying. It's just, I was thinking about that in terms of like the original movie. It's just like, when that came out, there was no expectation. There was just, a lot of people saw it and it was like, oh my God, that's amazing. And I'm sure a lot of people saw it and was like, that's all right. It's like, but then it just, after the original trilogy and in the intervening years, it got to a point where it's just like, you can't just have a mild take on it.
Yeah. Well,
But I agree with Chris in the sense that's exactly what Amanda was saying. It might have not blown her socks off, but the idea that it's a movie and it wasn't a waste of 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
It was a pleasurable 2.5 hours, and it was great.
It's like Phantom Menace. Is like I remember, I was 16 when it came out. We went and saw it. I remember people immediately reacting poorly, and I just remember thinking, it's like, it wasn't great, but it's just like I'm not gonna lose my mind
Not
over
bad.
it. No, it was kind of bad, but I'm not gonna lose my mind over it.
well, you know what children the world over and sci-fi nerds all have in common, and it's their great love for debates about trade taxation and blockading trade routes.
In vaguely racist Chinese accents.
Yeah. There were a lot of weird decisions made. Anyway, we're going to wrap it up there.
right.
Chris, do you want to give the audience a preview of what next month looks like, or just blindside them with it?
Oh, it's going to kind of be a grab bag of things. I don't have any overarching. I don't have a central. I didn't sit down and block out a huge thing like you did. I just have several ideas that I don't know could quite fill an entire show. So I'm just gonna.
Well, remember, you have to do this 4 times this year.
Oh, I'll have plenty.
Okay. All right.
But I'm just gonna go down a list, and however long it takes, and we'll just wrap it up there, and to be continued.
That's fair. All right. So if we're oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I can preview something since I brought it up earlier. The part where I think things have gotten too nuanced in terms of characterization, and I don't think there's enough media where good guys are just allowed to be good and bad guys are just allowed to be bad. And actually, a good jumping off point for that, if you guys want to check it out, I might have done it through back channels, but I saw Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, and it's a really good movie.
Okay. All right. Well, for listeners of our other podcasts on the Long Walk Podcast Network, especially the wrestling fans, we just watched the 2023 Royal Rumble last night. Today is Sunday the 29th, so tomorrow on Monday, David Two Dogs Hayes and Shelby Death Ray Patterson will be recording an episode of This Is a Work where they break down and discuss the Royal Rumble, so you can be on the lookout for that. Stan, if people want to follow you online or reach out to you online, where can Chris, if people want to reach out to you?
I heard I was found in the dark web, so.
You don't know what the dark web is. Chris,
Somebody.
if people want to reach out to you online or follow you online, where can they do that at?
I'm on Twitter, but let's see how long that's going to go for.
I'm shocked Twitter is still functioning. If you want to follow me personally online, the best place to do that is on Instagram at DBHensley. If you want to keep up with the shows on here, you can go on Instagram and follow at Long Walk Podcast. That's Long Walk Podcast singular, or at This Is a Takeover. And if you're so inclined and you're still using Twitter, you can follow at Long Walk Podcast, or you can follow this_pod. If you want to keep up with Long Walk Productions, you can visit us online at longwalk.us, or you can search for Long Walk Productions and Long Walk Podcasts on Facebook. I need to take that line out because we don't really update the Facebook a whole lot. To see more of our original work or hear past episodes that are no longer streaming, you can follow the YouTube links in the show notes. Thank you very much for listening, and if you enjoy this show or any of the shows on the Long Walk Podcast Network, please make sure to leave us a rating and a review on whatever platform you are listening on.
Peace out.
May the Force be with you.
And you.